Incoming message.
It was the dawn of the third age of mankind. Groovy.
Hi-ho. This is me, Kermit the Frog.
Hello there.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Not a great plan.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Let's see what's out there. Engage.
Hey there, we're those Sci-Fi guys. This is Those Sci-Fi Guys show. Just two working dudes, different lives, different jobs, but a whole lot of love for science fiction and the fun that comes with. We are your hosts. I am P.S. McKay, coming to you from a dastardly battle for health against the flu. And it was a rough ride, my friends. Like an old man trying to send soup back at a deli.
Yeah, that was from a movie.
That's from a TV show, Seinfeld. The
Right.
scene was rough that day, my friends.
Right. It was a great episode.
I always cite my references, but yeah. So, hence why we're just jumping right in. One episode this week. DT, how you doing?
I'm good. Ish.
Good-ish. That's always good to hear. Not. You all right?
Yeah, man, I'm okay. I've got surgery coming up, so it is what it is. We both have some health stuff going on, but it'll be all right.
Yeah, I don't have to go under the knife though. But
I don't think there's really going to be much knife. It's more
it's
scope.
all laparoscopic now, right?
Yeah.
It's all yeah, there's not much knifing going on in medical terms anymore.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be a drill and maybe some suction and maybe I was kind of hoping for a bio bed, but I guess that's not ready yet.
No, it's not.
We have some people out there who could work on it, but no, they're making shitty trucks and sending yahoos into space.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos sucks, man.
And Musk is still producing the freaking Cybertruck, which makes me want to vomit every time I drive down the road.
You only want to vomit because you're jealous.
Ugh.
You know it.
I would rather start any sort of firearm than drive one of those.
I must say, I am a contrarian at heart. Okay. And
contrarian is just a fancy word for being an asshole. Okay.
Well, from a certain perspective,
people enjoy
yes.
being an asshole.
From a certain perspective, yes. And
yesterday was May the 4th, so what should you say? From a certain point of view. Well, yes. May the
4th. As a Catholic.
And also with you.
And also with you. May the 4th be with you. And also with you. That's always what happens with me.
Exactly. I've sent that. Of course, then there's also my friend Ray, who called me Mando downrange, and I would always respond as "This is the Ray," and so that's primary parts of our communication.
Nice.
Ray is a follower of those Sci-Fi guys. So,
hey, shout out to Ray, man. One of our fervent followers here.
Ray's here.
Ray's here. Oh, damn it! I don't have that cut. Next time, Ray, I promise you.
They used that in so much promotional footage for Everybody Loves Raymond that you think it's really in like 10, 12 seasons. And really that guy was only in like a half dozen, maybe 10 episodes.
Yeah. It just worked out. That's
Uncle Leo?
Yeah, Uncle Leo. Tell me, can you hear this? Can you hear this? I couldn't even hear that. Did you hear that? Interesting. Hold on, because I lowered the volume to 0. All right, let's try this one more time.
Didn't hear our
I'm just working
introduction
out
either,
some.
so
I know you didn't. So what about this?
Do it. Do it.
Did you hear that?
I did. Did you step on a frog?
I've seen everything. Yeah, I've seen it all.
Yeah, I have. No, but yes. Interesting. I hope that the intro actually goes through.
Yeah, otherwise
I
you're
heard it
back to
all.
the old splicing and dicing.
Oh my god! One last thing. The nice thing about StreamYard, I was bitching to my son about this the other day. Because I was typing in my computer trying to upload one of the episodes recently, and he asks me a random question. I'm talking to him about it, and then I turn and I'm like, you know what, man? You know what, bud? It used to be that all I needed to do was to edit the audio out of a video, put the musical stuff in, and then upload one audio file to our website. That's it. That's all I needed to do. And then it turned into uploading one audio file and then one video file. Okay, that's all I needed to do. And then I started doing one audio file and then two video files, which was Rumble, which we've got a fantastic response on, by the way. I got to say thank you to all our Rumble viewers and listeners. And then we started...
yes.
And then we started uploading to Spotify. So then it became 2 audio files, 2 video files. I'm like, okay, great. That's awesome. And now it's gotten to the point where I am uploading 3 video files, 1 audio file, because Spotify can split up your video file to audio and video alone.
That's crazy, man.
And 4 shorts. which have been a boom for us, by the way. Fantastic opportunity for us to be able to share our thoughts in 1-minute segments. People really dig it. Like they're watching that. But I'm talking to my son. I'm like, the only reason why StreamYard is so beneficial is because, number one, I don't have to do a lot of post-production other than start uploading to everything now. I have to upload to everything now. I remember in the days, we would have like 4 or 5 episodes backlogged that I didn't edit yet. And I would cruise through them in a night, like, 2 hours, edit 4 of them and then throw them up, schedule them as they were. Not anymore. Because platforms demand it.
Well, I mean, I upload these things to the Facebook, and occasionally I'll toss some memes out, maybe AI generate a couple of random things. Try to engage other people. It is what it is. You do your best. We've increased followers there too, which has been good. Had some family come on board recently, had some friends of ours come on board recently, so that's pretty cool. Hey, one of the guys, one of our followers just did work on my house, did a great job.
No way, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
guy
cool.
I went to school with, he started following us, and we needed to put a railing on the front porch and some other things, kind of helps having the disabled veteran have a porch with a railing on it. So a handrail going up, but apparently code only requires you to have a railing if you have 3 steps, but we have 2. But it is New England and it gets icy in the winter.
Yes, it's so scary. It could be scary.
Yeah.
It could be scary icy.
And it's not just me, the creaky kneed disabled veteran that goes up and down those stairs. My parents, who are in generally good health, But
Age
still,
comes for us all, and
age
even if
comes
you're in
for us
good
all.
health, even if you're in good health, that
Yeah,
that
if you're
one
on
fall, man,
even
that one
exactly.
fall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, screw that.
Hell no.
Uh-huh. No, like I mean, my in-laws have been dealing with uh I mean, they're fine. They're great. They're awesome. They're living their life. I love them. They're fantastic. Their friends though are talking about limiting their lifestyle because they are afraid of falling. Like a couple people have fallen, and it's just a reality of the situation. And ugh, yeah. So the handrail, great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Good job.
Well, it's good. And here's but complete to change gears a little bit. We had gone through a bit of a lull in content recently, so much so that we literally did a video on upcoming content, in part because there wasn't much out at the time. That
Mm-hmm.
being said, contact is coming hard and fast. I, for
I
one, just
know.
went to see Thunderbolts yesterday. Andor is in full
Yeah.
swing.
Uh-huh.
Yesterday, they also dropped Tales of the Underworld, which was, and my
Oh, I
kid,
forgot
my
about
kid
that.
is on her 8th grade trip right now, so that's cool. But we only watched 3 of the episodes. We were able to get through the Asajj Ventress arc. We haven't gone into Cad Bane, but the Ventress arc was really good, and it's definitely a sequel to the movie or to the novel Dark Disciple, which was basically a novelization of an unaired arc of the Clone Wars series that once they canceled it, like the Ahsoka book, once they canceled the shows, they took plot points and turned them into these novels, which
Mm-hmm.
even the Ahsoka arc in Tales of the Jedi, that last piece, like the Siege of Mandalore was brought up in the Ahsoka book, and then they brought it into season 7 of the Clone Wars. And then when she faces down that Inquisitor in the farmland in the last episode, in her last episode of Tales of the Jedi, that was from this Ahsoka novel. So Filoni has been tying into these novels, which were based on either full plot points or ideas he had for season 6 and 7 of the Clone Wars back when it got axed during the Disney buyout. So
Yeah. Well, I
that's
don't blame
that's
him.
one we'll have to review. And at the first 3 episodes, there was nothing longer than like 17 or 18 minutes, as these usually go.
Yeah.
Which really just makes them like 5 or 6 minutes shorter than a Clone Wars episode. But they were
Technically
good.
true.
It was good. And when my kid gets back, we'll watch the last 3, especially since I'll be laid up for a few days.
How long is your daughter gone for?
She'll be back before the end of the week.
So it's Monday. Was
And
it like a
that's as
whole week
far as
thing,
I'm
or?
willing to go on this.
I'm just asking about the trip itself. I mean, we're not going to go into
She's gone
identifiers
for a
or
few
anything.
days. You know,
Yeah.
part of it is the travel because they're taking
Yeah.
terrestrial conveyance. So
A bus. Yeah. Was that how you did it?
no, we took an even older transportation system, which
The
technically should
train?
have gone faster. Yes, we took.
Really? You took the train? I don't remember
Yeah,
hearing about a train.
honestly,
I didn't
man,
go. I didn't go.
I
I should have, but I didn't go. I don't know.
yeah,
I had an attitude in 8th grade. There's a lot going on with my
you
personal
have an
life in 8th
attitude
grade.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. I've gone through a lot. Okay. So,
Of toilet paper.
well, that too. But in 8th grade was a weird year for me, man.
I know, buddy.
Um,
I know.
but
But here's the thing, man. So the one thing I'll give to the train was like you could get up, you could walk around, you could go to another car and use that bathroom.
Yeah. Not on a bus.
No, but the trip down was successful, and that's all that matters.
Does she have a
Safe.
phone?
Yes, they're allowed phones. I
See,
mean,
that's and that's the difference between us and them now. Like my son just came back from Houston a couple weeks ago. That was his first big trip. And it's neat. Like you get to send them off on their own thing,
yeah.
but you still kind of have a tether on them. I
Well,
don't know if
just
that's a good or
remember
a bad
when
thing.
I
As
went
a
down,
parent, I like it.
I mean, it's nice to have that communication, and she would keep us updated, on the road. Sometimes there were just
Mhm.
cheesy selfies of her making faces at us, sending it to the family chat.
Nice.
Like, they stopped and apparently they hit a Burger King, so she's wearing a crown.
No. Newsflash,
So,
Burger King still gives out crowns. I can't even
yeah,
remember the last time I ate at a Burger King.
Burger King had the deal with Army and Air Force bases, so you'd go on to one and there was a Burger King in the food court. So I
Yeah.
even had Burger King in Iraq. So
Yes,
they
they
set up
would.
a food.
That was I think there was a joke about the logistics of the Army being able to set up a Burger King in anywhere within 24
Yes.
hours.
The fact that should scare people the most is the fact that we could set up a fully functioning Burger King in 24
Yeah,
hours. We can airlift a Burger King trailer. I
we
shit you
could.
not.
You were the one that brought the attention to the idea that logistics is the United States' greatest weapon. And every other foreigner that I have heard talk about the United States military force has always remarked that the US's greatest asset was its logistics. Like just bar none. Like at least twice as fast as any other nation. Maybe 3 times as fast than most to be
There
able
was a
to
great,
coordinate and set up shop.
and there's a great quote by Omar Bradley, 5-star general, World War II leader.
The Bradley tank was named after him.
Yes, it is an infantry fighting vehicle. Technically, it's not a true tank.
I sense your hesitation. I got you. I know.
It's all
That's
good.
the civilian talking.
These are things I hope to educate. But I believe it was Omar Bradley who said, "Amateurs study tactics, professionals study logistics." Because, and there's all sorts of the lines of the support branches of the Army, like the Signal Corps. Their unofficial motto is they can talk about us, but they can't talk without us.
Mm.
Every
Yeah.
branch has its motto, and it's kind of like the house words in Game of Thrones. Winter is coming,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like the Lannisters. They have an official one, but the ones that everybody knows is the Lannister always pays his debts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is not the official house words of House Lannister. Like air defense artillery, its official motto I can't remember off the top of my head, but the unofficial motto was, "If it flies, it dies."
I love it. I love it.
So
Yeah, that's great.
these tongue-in-cheek ones are always amusing, but our logistics is one of our greatest strengths. It's always said that it's like takes twice as many support elements as combat elements to win a war, right? So if you see like 10,000, armor and infantrymen lined up ready to kick your ass, there's 20 to 30,000 supports troops behind them, enabling them to do it. Ordnance, maintenance, signal, the engineers, you name it, and even the other combat arms like engineers and artillery and aviation and whatnot. But you have all the other, finance and administration, and all of that is there. And quartermaster, always need a good quartermaster, aka supply. All
Aren't
right?
they the most
And
annoying person in the? I
like
mean, that's what it's
everything else,
portrayed about in media, anyway. At least, like in entertainment.
well,
Like
there's
the one
always
person behind.
the shady supply sergeant is a cliche for a reason. The
I love it.
supply guy
It's so true.
who
Oh,
you don't
I'm
want to
so glad
ask,
this is true.
the best supply people aren't just the people who know their shit, and a lot of them,
Yeah.
most of them really do. But sometimes they're the ones that maybe you don't want to ask too many questions about. That's
Yeah.
like at the lower level. When you're getting like to the serious high level, that maybe you don't want to know is really more like there's a whole list of things, and it's a lot of, sometimes it's wheeling and dealing. Like, all right, we have extra of this. Do you guys have any of this? And there's a little bit of shifting, not of anything like that would be what we call an inspectable or a sensitive item, but more like, what we call expendable items. Do you have any extra packs of MREs, or do you have, we're short on gauze or something like that? You
Mhm.
do your best to try to work with your peers. And sometimes it's just a boss saying, you will support this guy and you will support that guy. Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Roger. But, there was also a great quote attributed to, I believe, French soldiers from Afghanistan on the difference between U.S. and European armies. Whereas in a lot of European armies, if you kill or take out one of their officers, the troops are trained to hunker down and wait for reinforcements. In the U.S.
Foreign
military,
officers.
Foreign.
This is foreign armies.
Yes, this is
Yes.
the more European centric militaries.
Yep.
It's quoted as saying the U.S. military, if you take out one of their officers, they will kill you.
It's the next man up. It takes charge, right?
Well, the theory is that the Europeans kind of think that U.S. officers are designed to hold their troops back. But
I
there's been
fucking
many cases.
love that. No, hold on. Let's let that sink in a second. It's the U.S. officers that are holding back the army against their foes. Like,
Well, again,
rabbit
that is a European quote about U.S. military. Now, it's not so much holding back, like preventing them from war crimes, but in the event
understood.
it is next man up in the U.S. military, right? Or next person up, excuse me. Try to have to move
Whatever.
beyond those
We know the
gender roles,
euphemisms. No, shut
but
up.
the
It's
next
fine.
the next one
Euphemisms are
up,
euphemisms.
right?
fine.
So the next person up, right? If senior leaders in fact, I remember in training, they'd be out and we'd be out and doing a field exercise, and somebody would walk along and go, "Boom, your platoon leader's dead. What do you do?" And as soon as you go, well, boom, you're dead. Turn to the next guy. What's the plan? And it's usually like,
Damn.
get to cover, or they're
Yeah.
attacked or something. It's like you got to make that quick decision.
Oh, God,
And that's
so wonderful training. It's so high stress, but it's just needed.
In some ways it's also super cheesy too. Like, boom, it's
Of
it's like the
course.
things you see in TV, right? Boom, you're dead. What do you do? Your captain's dead. What do you do?
Yeah.
Ah, but there's some truth to that, right? So you have this situation where, if your leadership is out of commission, may not be dead, but unconscious, incapacitated, whatever, you have, the next person up needs to be able to extract, solve the problem, be it withdraw from the situation, advance the situation. Sometimes it's just led to acts of, bravery, and sometimes acts of lunacy. But you have, a leader go down, and then the next thing you know, the only thing that they can do is, all right, a lot of enemies like to take out leadership because they think it'll cause a command, a command structure to
Yeah.
crumble. And if you take out enough leaders, that eventually will happen in any formation. But in the U.S. military, we train our enlisted, our non-commissioned officers to be able to take that next step, and we want them to be at the next level where, yes, they're a new leader and they're going to be pushing forward. So we don't just teach them to hunker down, we teach them to
No.
advance the mission in whatever way possible. So
Do
if
you can okay,
go
finish
ahead,
your
go ahead.
statement. Finish
Well,
no, finish
so
your statement. I got a question for
so
you
in
afterwards.
in the event that you're in the middle of attack and your leader's down, you know, the best thing to do is either, if you can continue the plan to completion, do it. If you need to pivot and, you know, assess the situation, you know, there's many times where leaders have gone down and a subordinate leader has taken a different angle and seen something, or has taken advantage of you know, the enemy maybe getting overconfident and then taking them out. And sometimes then they're just pissed off. You took out their sergeant, you took out their lieutenant, their captain, and now these guys are going to hunt you down.
They're out for blood.
And maybe the worst thing you could have done was shoot the leader. You know, because now they're going to end the threat.
Vengeance
with
is
extreme
in the air
prejudice.
now.
No, we don't use vengeance.
I know.
We
I
do
can say that
execute the
because
mission
until
with
you-
extreme prejudice. The term extreme prejudice always gets me.
I got you. Let me ask you this question.
Sure. Mhm.
Do you think that the difference between the European method and the American method is strictly because the American method was fostered through the revolution, where it was just a bunch of civilians trying to fight the world's most advanced army ever, and all they could do was just say next man up, literally next man up, back in the 1700s?
Well, I think part of it also comes from the fact that, you know, I mean, when you look at how our military was, even the Continental Army was roughly based on European standards, right? And they brought in foreign officers, French, Germans, Poles, you know.
Yeah, I was disgusted as a high school student to learn that we had a bunch of foreign officers commanding colonials.
Most of them were not commanding. Some were, but a lot of them were brought in and trained.
But
they were professional soldiers.
Yeah, they were doing a service, and it was a wonderful service that they performed.
Pazuzu, Pulaski, some of our, you know, the training that these foreign officers gave to, you know, along with you know, Americans, but a lot of these gave at Valley Forge turned the Continental Army and even a lot of the militias into a more cohesive fighting force. And
I mean, Lafayette was integral to that, wasn't he?
He was, but he kind of volunteered. He brought some money. He threw that in, and you know, he kind of became an aide de camp, like George Washington kind of mentored him in a lot of ways because he was so young. He was like 22 or something when he came over here.
That's not how he was portrayed in The Patriot with Mel Gibson, that's for sure. Although
that wasn't Lafayette.
Oh, that wasn't Lafayette. You're right.
It was a French officer, but it wasn't Lafayette.
I'm sorry. You're right. You're absolutely correct.
It's okay. Sometimes it's very historically, like if you watch Gettysburg, the movie, which in so many ways is very historically accurate, or at least, if nothing else, fairly accurate to the novel, A Killer Angels. You have people who were like portraying some of these Civil War generals, and a lot of these Civil War generals were in their 20s and 30s, and you got guys in their 40s and 50s, mostly because they have huge beards. And you're like,
yeah.
The guy playing John Bell Hood was, I think, like 50 years old, and John Bell Hood was like 30, I don't know, in his early 30s in the Civil War. He just had a big ass beard.
Yeah, middle-aged man in those days.
I mean, 30s was kind of middle-aged, sort of, back then. I mean,
And
most
they
people
looked
didn't
they
live
looked
beyond
50.
60.
They looked
Yeah.
50 in their 30s back then.
But you
yes,
get
you're
some of these
correct.
people and they shave their face and you're like, wow, they really are just kids.
Yeah.
So, but, and you bring up an interesting point about the training and the military and the insurgency fighting, the guerrilla warfare used in the revolution as we built. And I think one of the things that we did was this country, the militia program, people, they kind of elected their own officers. So they took charge of these things. So there had to be some level of trust. But also, these were small units. They weren't heavy, big, powerful units, right? They weren't a regular army. And I think that's where a lot of, you see in early U.S. history, like people rising through the ranks quickly through heroism and quick decision making. Guys who joined the army and were like privates or even, made captain of their militia company. And the next thing you know, they're commanding thousands of troops in battle.
Let me take this one step further for you. I'll expound upon
Sure.
what you're saying.
Good, because I have a salient point that actually can bring us into our topic, but keep going.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I see where you're going too. I know where you're going, and I appreciate that. I like it. It took a certain kind of person to leave everything they knew back in Europe to start a completely new life in America. Yeah, bang that computer pretty good.
I almost
to
got
start
this little bug.
Yeah. To start a completely new life in America, right? The only kind of person that can do that, I actually can relate to, is someone, and you yourself too. You went home though, but you've seen the world. But the only kind of person that could do that is someone who's willing to take chances. And that's the big thing.
I took plenty of chances.
You took a lot of chances, sir. And I will say you took more chances than I did. Trust me. But
look, you took a big risk because you left an entire support structure. At least I joined a huge support structure.
Yes, that's one way to look at it, and I agree with you. I'm not trying to put myself on some kind of pedestal or anything. I'm just trying to say, like, Americans in and of themselves are a self-selecting breed that came out here to try something new and to create something fresh. And it's only a certain kind of mentality that would do that. And in that certain mentality, you would have a certain fighting spirit. And that's what the British were not prepared for. And I think that
and everybody was brewing their own booze.
Oh, it was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time that they did that. But I think that same mentality has existed up to this point to create such a military doctrine that we have that is in complete discongruence with the rest of the world, especially Europe, when they're based off of. By the way, Europe has gone through hell within the last 200 years. They've gone through hell, right? And so all they want is comfort. All they want is just to, let things lie, not have to worry about things. Put concerns in another position, in another person's favor. Fine. I understand that. It's wrong, but I understand it. Whereas Americans are like, so that's why you hunker down. You wait for the next leader to come in, right? Do you think I'm wrong?
Well, some of it is the fact that we put a lot of leadership training in our enlisted, especially once they become non-commissioned officers.
I mean,
our sergeants,
yeah.
routinely go through same, levels of professional education. You can't get your next stripe until you go to the next level of schooling to a degree, right? So they have them, and we encourage them to be educated as well, because education can help bring faster more promotion points for the junior soldiers, and more uh, opportunities for promotion the higher up in rank you get. There's a certain point where we're like, well, we would like you to be somewhat educated. And at times, as when I was a junior officer and I hadn't yet gone for my master's program, I had, soldiers who had master's degrees. They had a further, higher education than I did. And I tried to make that point in recruiting when they would be like, well, we'll talk to you because you're an officer. So that means you have a college degree. Like, I have 4 soldiers right now who have master's degrees. I haven't even gotten a master's degree yet.
Mm-hmm.
They're like,
Yeah.
and didn't compute to the educators at the time. They're like, wait, what? You're not the most educated? Look, I went to college right out of high school, and I got my commission. Okay. Some of these guys have done this on top of their career in the Army, got associates, bachelor's, and then master's degrees. So, I mean, we
God bless
encourage
them, by the way.
we encourage our soldiers to become educated. Our soldiers, seamen, airmen, Marines, we want them to become more educated. That increases their chances for promotion. We also, the ones who show the most promise, the most aptitude for promotions, or for higher levels of responsibility, we try to send to more schools, either job-centric schools or career advancement schools. The more of these things you go to, the more education you have, be it a tactical education, civilian military style education, whatever. The more you show, the more it shows that you're wanting to continue to grow and better yourself, that the Army wants, or the military in general wants to invest in you with. So that is important to us. And we've had a lot of experiences in the U.S. military, being that we really didn't have a large standing army until after World War II. We had a very small standing army. That was kind of the part they didn't want that at the end of the Revolution. In fact, the Navy was almost completely disbanded after the Revolution until they said, now we're having some people poking us in the eye on the high seas. Let's go ahead and we'll build the 6 original frigates, including the Constitution. And then, right. And it was the Barbary pirates, the French, people picking a fight with the fledgling nation.
Yeah.
But we were a scrappy underdog for a good chunk of our history until the mid 20th century. Really, people didn't take us overly seriously.
Well, they didn't need to, because we were so isolated, and that's geography, and that's fine.
We were also kind of isolationist at times,
and we should have been. We needed to be.
You want to invade? Go ahead and take that 3-month journey. Oh, I'm sorry,
like
a month journey. It's still 2 weeks, man.
It's still 2 weeks. We've got 2 weeks notice that you're going to invade, and we're going to hit you with everything you have before you even get within 1,000 miles of our coast.
And that was advantage. I mean, it's still a fairly decent advantage for us. The 2 oceans on either side, but we had a lot of things that we did, and fighting the British in the Revolution and the War of 1812, we were generally outmanned a lot of these fights. When we went into Mexico in 1845, the U.S. Army was actually outnumbered in most of the major battles of the Mexican-American War.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the fight with Spain, I mean, they'd been there for years, so now we're fighting an enemy who kind of knows the terrain, even though the Cubans hated their guts and helped us out. But, we were very underdog-ish at times. The these fights that we were in sometimes was overcome by, oh, okay, like take for instance Teddy Roosevelt. He wasn't even command of the Rough Riders when they landed in Cuba. He was their second in command.
Yeah.
His general goes down. His colonel gets bumped up to the next level. Roosevelt takes over the Rough Riders, and it's his move, in some of his move, along with that of the 10th Cavalry, which kind of gets overshadowed in the Battle of San Juan Hill history. But the Buffalo Soldiers of the 10th Cavalry, led by a lieutenant by the name of Pershing, if that name rings a bell to anybody.
Pershing. Yeah, General
the guy
Pershing.
who was, yes, the
Holy
guy
shit.
who led forces in World War One. Yeah, he was a lieutenant and he was called Black Jack because he enjoyed serving with the Buffalo Soldiers, and they charged right alongside up Kettle Hill and San Juan Hill. And the decision to push to the next hill was more independent of Roosevelt and company up there. The communication was bad, and there was a lot of initiative taken, and the U.S. military rewards initiative in independent thinking. In some other foreign militaries, it's less encouraged.
And that's the thing. That's the thing, right? That's a uniquely American thing. Like in education, American education fosters creativity, independent thinking. Not in
It's
Europe.
supposed to, anyway.
I know. The general setup is to allow independent thinking and creativity, and you see it most of the country. But and this was what was pointed out to me in college by my psychology professor was Europe doesn't foster independent thinking. They say, no, you need to follow these rules. And I'll give you, I think I brought this up a long time ago on the pod. And I know I'm interjecting, and then you can bring us into our topic. But this is what's unique about America. You give an American child, a 5-year-old, a picture of a beach ball that's black and white, right? And then you give them crayons, and they'll color that beach ball however they want. They'll do all purple, or they'll do in one section, they'll do purple, they'll do red, and then they'll go outside the lines, they'll do anything, right? They're just gonna have fun. They're gonna do their thing. In France, what happens is when you give a 5-year-old a picture of a beach ball, you give them the page that they're going to color, but then you give them the page with the colors that they're supposed to color with. So you're supposed to have that circle at the top be yellow. Make sure that child colors in yellow. You have to have this one triangle be red, and then this one triangle be white, and this one be blue, and this one be white, and this one be green as you go through. And if you don't do it that way, you're punished. You have to follow the rules of what they dictate. Whereas American schools do not do that in most cases.
I mean, there's rules, and you've got to follow certain things, but
I'm not saying that it's
an issue.
I'm not saying that it's anarchy, but I'm just saying like American culture just fosters a creativity. I know, but that's the other side of the coin. We have to deal with that, and I think we've balanced it pretty well.
Well, here's one of the things that we also had to do, right, with our military, but also as our country, right? So
and I love that our military fosters that independence. By the way, that's what I wanted to point out.
I mean, there is still rule of law and rules and regulations that require to follow, but we also want people to think outside the box with creative problem solving as well. I mean, it does at times seem counterintuitive, and sometimes it might be. Sometimes you have bosses who prefer less improvisation and more strict thought process. I myself tried to be kind of a hybrid. There's got to be what we call giving someone your left and right limits. Some people, their limits were very narrow. Some people, they were a little too wide. I tried to keep them in a nice mid-range where people had room to play, but we still didn't cross the no-no lines. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to everything. There's got to be balance, like with the Force. But also, if you look at us and look at the rebellion.
Bring us in. Yeah,
Okay,
there it is. There it is. I saw it.
They start in some ways similar to how we start, or how most rebellions start, quietly, in secret, sometimes with flashpoints like you saw at Ferrix in season 1, where the people are tired of getting pushed around and they riot. Okay.
Yep.
You see a planet, Gorman, which is being systematically targeted for oppression, for squashing if you squash this well-regarded planet, then everybody else around you knows you mean business. They're generally a peaceful people. They do textiles. They're kind of a center of art and culture. And if you squash them and you make it look like they're starting the problem, people can be like, oh, okay, these guys, they kind of mean business, but, wasn't really their fault. And they're doing a psychological operation. This is psyops at their best. They're planning psychological operations against this. They are trying to destabilize this planet. They have all sorts of propaganda going against it. You hear at the very beginning of episode 4 where Cyril's talking to his mother, and he's playing I don't think the Gormans are so bad.
They're good people, mother. They're good people, mother.
You're listening to too much propaganda.
Yeah. You're listening to the Imperial propaganda too much. It is propaganda. Oh, Cyril, you don't know. You don't know.
It's almost fitting that they started dropping Andor in the immediate wake of the 250th anniversary of Lexington and Concord. Okay? Because everything leading up to the Battle of Lexington and Concord was all stuff like this. The secret meetings with the Sons of Liberty, and that's who the British were going to find. Samuel Adams and John Hancock, okay, and other members of the Sons of Liberty, who they know had a hand in that little shindig back in Boston a couple of years before, as well as all these other disturbances, the protests against all these taxes. They knew enough. And the British had Boston under martial law in 1775.
Yep.
The city of Boston was an occupied city because we said, fuck off.
They probably sounded just like that too.
A little kind of a muddled accent at the time, but
I think it's actually pretty close to what the modern accent sounds now.
But this stuff is very similar. And now you're seeing a bit more from the Imperial side where they've got a mole inside. But you see a guy like Andor is one of these guys who's known as, who's had some training, who's had some fighting. And they send him to Gorman to try to look over their resistance cell and to try to give feedback. And he's like, these guys are not ready. And in some ways, they're going to walk themselves right into the Empire's clutches is really what Andor kind of feels. Not so much the clutches. He doesn't really know that they're being watched, but they're all paranoid anyway.
Yeah.
So, but this is kind of how our revolution got started. There were frameworks underneath. It wasn't just a bunch of dudes got hammered on Sam Adams' bathtub brew one night and decided they were going to go pick a fight with the I mean, some of them did, but
That was a factor. That was a big factor. But yes, you're
but the
correct.
point was, and you have Dawes and you have Revere, and they're all out on I think it's Prescott, Dawes, and Revere, and they are
Prescott Hill.
multiple prongs. The writers who
Yeah.
spread the alarm.
Yeah. By the way, the female writer completely fabricated.
Well, yeah, but it's also Connecticut's legend too. It's not. She wasn't writing out of Boston either. There is one story from Connecticut who was spreading the word of Lexington and Concord.
Yeah, but was that same woman that was alleged?
There's a few.
Yeah, it wasn't the
Some
same
have more
woman.
fact to them than others.
Yeah, no, the nephew of the woman in 1880 started making that story. But I just want to point out truth. That's all. I'm not deriding anyone in any way, shape, or form.
Well, this was a big deal, right? So you have these seminal moments, right? It's not just the listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere, which is awesome, of course. But it's also the whole underground movement that was the Sons of Liberty, that was the colonies weren't 100% on board on this. There was still debate as to whether or not all the other colonies wanted to get involved in what they thought was Boston's beef, Massachusetts' beef with Britain at the time. And, there were people who thought of themselves more as British and other people who thought of themselves more as American. But we also have, these examples in science fiction where Andor seems to, they're in that early phase. It's not the open rebellion we see during A New Hope, or even, in Star Wars or in Rogue One, where they actually have a fleet assembled. There's no fleet. There's not a lot of military support at the time. There was a lot of people working behind it. You have a politician like Mon Mothma funneling money to this cause. Now she's kind of like almost an Adams Hancock kind of figure who is a public figure, in many ways more like John Adams, somebody who's definitely a staunch supporter of independence, but is also a very well respected member of the legal community, the civic leaders, rising, and who are debating whether or not we should have open war, that we should, go for independence, or is peace with England, really possible. And while England was doing some shitty stuff by, impressing a lot of taxes on people who don't have representation, you start to see that more and more in Andor. I mean, Mon Mothma's whole arc in the 3 parts, these 3 episodes, is she's having to go and trying to get people on her side on votes, to repeal, oppression on places like Gorman and other spots. But also she's trying to, see who's maybe supportive. She's gauging who might be people to approach for support. But also there's all these brand new senators to the Republic, and they're having to give up basically loyalty statements in front of the Galactic Senate. And of course, they have to throw the word empire in. And, you see her kind of like gritting her teeth through most of this as she has to dodge, you know, anything that makes her seem like a radical, even though she is. There's a lot going on her side. It's insane when you think about the amount of risk that these people put in. And that's kind of where we're going in these 3 episodes, right? So it's a year after, the first piece. It's a year after the harvest issues where Brasso gets killed. It's a year after Bix's attempted assault. The fight with the Imperials on the farming planet of Mina Rao. And then you also, Mon Mothma's daughter, getting married. And so a year passes, right? Cassian and Bix look like they're hiding out on Coruscant. They're both operators for Luthen, but Bix is troubled by her nightmares. She's struggling, but they're kind of living together. And she's keeping things from him. He's still going out on missions, but he's trying to protect her. It's tough, right? There's a commitment to each other, their commitment to the cause, and the Empire is really, zeroing in on building an armory on this planet Gorman, which is this peaceful textile planet, and Cyril is he's posing as an imperial, I don't know, administrator. Really, but he's also playing up, being sympathetic to the cause. So he's trying to get into their resistance movements, their underground. And by the way, this is where they talk about in these episodes, they talk about the Gorman Massacre, which was a seminal event in Star Wars lore that is very little explored, but it's basically where Tarkin kind of lands his personal ship on a bunch of protesters and then opens fire. So
I had a question about that.
Yeah.
The Gorman Massacre that I heard about when I was reading about the first couple episodes was referencing something that happened like a year or two after BBY 4. And that was the spark of the rebellion that caused Mon Mothma to say, we're rebelling. But this thing they're talking about happened like 15 years prior to BBY 3.
Well, yeah, this sounds like it happens right after the rise of the Empire. So it sounds almost like they have a bit of a Tiananmen Square moment with Tarkin coming in.
But Rebels said that this happened in Rebels.
So there could be essentially 2. It's like part 1, part 2. Okay.
Well, and that's what they're leading up to at this point.
So that's what this feels like. So there was kind of a massacre already where they said hundreds of people were killed. So as deep as Mon Mothma is in this already, okay, you can see that they're going to tie this to her part in Rebels, where she eventually has to go on the run and go to Yavin as they build that cell there, which will lead to both Rogue One and A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how it's building. But clearly, an original incident, maybe this proto-massacre, which is really, it's why this is a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Gorman's already kind of protested about this, right? and they feel that if the Empire increases their presence, it's going to push Gorman to a breaking point, one that they're probably not able to execute particularly well, given who they generally have seemed to be as a people. That's a whole running thing throughout Cassian's interactions with Luthen and conversations with the Resistance. He doesn't feel they're ready. He feels that they're not trained. They're not they're not a real aggressive people per se, or militant. Excuse me. That's the vibe. Now you have a couple of hotheads here and there, and that eventually blows up in their face later on.
Yeah.
But you have people who think that they're going to be able to get away with all these things and protest, but they don't, and one of the things Cassian kind of basically tells him is that these guys don't know what it takes. They eventually send Vel and Cinta in after Cassian kind of has a blow up with Luthen.
Yes.
And there's a whole lot of shit going down, especially as the episode 3 or 6 really winds down. But yeah, you got Saw Gerrera.
Have we
right
talked about
here.
Saw yet?
Not yet. I do. Saw is a very
It's from
interesting
episode
character.
4.
Yeah.
All right, I got to ask you some questions about Saw.
Yeah.
I apologize for disrupting your flow, but thank you for keeping things going while I was not available. Saw is not a good man. I mean, he even said he's crazy. Like, the revolution is not for the sane. He literally said that. And I know that Rogue One kind of set the standard with this by having Cassian shoot an injured rebel in order to save their movement rather than get captured.
Right.
But Saw was ready to kill that young engineer.
Yep. Willman.
And he was ready to kill him. And then he found out that the engineer that they had, who was taught by Willman, an older man, was a spy. And he shot him dead in the face in front of Willman.
I don't know if he was a spy or not.
That's the question, right?
So what I always felt was, because this guy was the one who's like, well, you don't need to kill Willman. I believe Saw questioned his commitment. He's like, I'll be able to do the one configuration, but probably not as good as this guy, So basically, Saw's like, all right, this dude's the weak link. So,
yeah.
And he did it in front of all of his people. So you kind of wonder is he a traitor? I mean, it says after learning he's a traitor, but you don't really see anything. They pull something out. I almost wonder if at some point they're going to maybe make a hint that this was just a way, like Saw won't tolerate weakness in his group. I mean, they're extremist rebels. These are the ones, and if you see his interactions with the rebel cells in Star Wars Rebels, when Saw makes an appearance there, and he's at odds with Mon Mothma. He's at odds with Luthen early in this series. Jyn Erso calls him out on it.
Clone Wars at all?
He originated in Clone Wars, and that's where I'm getting to. Saw is kind of tragic because I think it was season 5 of the Clone Wars, his planet of Andor, which had a great backstory in Legends, too deep to get into, but Andor is a very jungle heavy planet with a lot of big animals, some of which are dangerous, and that's why all their cities have walls. but they also
lot
live
like
kind of
Kashyyyk.
in harmony with their ants. They use a lot of animals for transportation and other beasts of burden as well. But Onderon, the rightful leader, was overthrown by a guy loyal to, who was basically a puppet for Dooku and the Separatists. And at this time, the Jedi decides to get into supporting insurgencies, local insurgencies against Separatists. So they send in advisors. It strikes very close to home for those of us who've gone and advised foreign militaries and whatnot. But they drop in Anakin, Obi-Wan, Rex, and Ahsoka to help train the Onderon rebels, led by the son of a former Separatist senator who was Padme's mentor, and her son Lux has kind of a flirtation with Ahsoka. They've met a couple of times before, and Lux, as the son of Onderon's senator, has some pull, but there's also two other kind of leaders, a brother and sister, Stila and Saw Gerrera. And Saw is this young, kind of cocky freedom fighter, not batshit crazy. And he's the guy in the very first episode or so, in the big first episode of Bad Batch, when the Empire sends them on a mission to, hunt down some supposed insurgents, and it turns out they're Saw Gerrera's rebels.
Yeah.
Who are trying to get out of there. And that's
Mm-hmm.
young Saw, who originates in the Clone Wars. So he was an early example of a animated character going to live action. And Saw has kind of a tragic past because his homeworld was oppressed by the Separatists. Then he leads to fight back, and his sister basically becomes the leader of the resistance, is elected by their troops. She's got this charisma. Saw's a little kind of butthurt because he kind of envisioned himself as a leader, but he loves his sister, so he supports her. And she dies helping protect Ahsoka. And she's given a hero's funeral when they kind of push the Separatists off the planet. But Saw is very broken by this, right? The clones come in to help them liberate themselves. His sister dies, and then within a year, months, whatever it is, his planet gets conquered by the Empire, and his freedom fighters are on the run from the Empire. And it's Hunter who kind of lets them go, and that causes a rift with Crosshair.
And in this show we see that he's in possession of X-wings as we know them. Was it his planet that had those, or
no? I don't know where they get them. Remember, this is like 15 plus years away from there. So that's
one of the things that went through my mind. Where did they get the X-wings from?
I know. I was a little surprised at the X-wings myself, because you don't really see it with Saw's guys at any point. He still has the U-wing, which is pretty cool. But Saw is kind of a tragic character in the fact that he's basically had to become a soldier at a young age to try to fight for his home, and then he loses his home.
Yeah.
And he loses his family, and now all that's left for him is the fight. And he
and then when you have nothing but the
consumed by it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And these are the things that if you only saw Rogue One you only saw Andor, you don't understand that depth of Saw's character.
That's the issue. That's me. I've only
Which is-
seen Saw in Rogue One and Andor. That's
which is
it.
also a shame.
He was also in Jedi Fallen Order.
Fallen Order. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was
Well-
fun. That was fun to see. And Lawrence Whitaker played him too.
Forrest Whitaker. You're getting him confused with Lawrence Fishburne, aren't you?
No, I'm not doing a black simile here. Come on, stop that.
Forrest Whitaker is a great actor, and for his
He is
little screen time-
amazing.
and
He
the
is-
sad thing was, the worst part about Rogue One was how little time he got. And I know there were reshoots, and I know that you had the two different versions of Saw and the promotions. So the fact that they gave him a couple episode tie-in with Rebels was huge. You actually had to watch the animated shows to get a little bit more out of him. And like you said, he probably was called in and did a bunch of these, recording sessions while he was doing the prep work for Rogue One, because it was all tie-in stuff. But I tell you, the more they build on Saw, I'm liking that, because what did he get, one episode?
Dark, man.
Didn't he get one episode or something like season 1? Really? Luthen goes
I really
to talk
don't
to him.
know. I don't remember.
He didn't get much screen time here. We're getting more screen time with Saw Gerrera, which I look forward to, because clearly his rebels are up to something. They're gonna have a big brawl, and that's probably where they're gonna start splitting from the main group, where they're kind of already at odds when we see them in Rebels.
Yeah. Well, they could get Forrest Whitaker, but they couldn't get Jimmy Smits, huh?
They, as far as what I read was that there was some sort of scheduling conflict.
Of course there was. It's always
but
scheduling conflict.
Again, and I don't know how much different in age Jimmy Smits and Benjamin Bratt are, but I do like Benjamin Bratt.
Benjamin Bratt was the actual. I looked it up. I know it's Benjamin Bratt, but I forgot the name until you brought it up. Like,
he's El Macho,
dang, sir.
It is El Macho.
Oh my God, what's that from? What was he in?
Despicable Me 2. He was
yes, thank you.
He had the nacho hat. He had the big Mexican restaurant. It is El Macho.
Oh my God.
He's a pretty solid character actor.
He's a great. Yeah, he's a good.
He was in Law and Order.
I mean, they
replaced an NYPD Blue guy with a Law and Order guy. I guess it's 90s TV cop swap.
Yeah, I mean, I sat there and I was like, is that Jimmy? That doesn't sound like Jimmy Smits. Wait a minute.
Hey, look, Jimmy Smits has gotten a lot of traction out of that character. Who,
of course, he
had like was basically like almost physical cameo only in Attack of the Clones, and then he gets a little to do in Revenge of the Sith, and a little to do in Rogue One, and a little to do in maybe a little in Obi-Wan. So he's gotten a lot of run out of that, and to talk about somebody who and Genevieve O'Reilly also kind of got the same treatment too, because she had like all of her shit was basically cut out of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, we had no idea Mon Mothma existed in Revenge of the Sith at all. So
those cut scenes of the senators, it would have made the movie better, because it sets the seeds from the rebellion almost for the start of the Empire.
I agree, but the movie was long enough as it was. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You have to make.
Lord of the Rings had like six endings per movie.
Because Lord of the Rings was based on a book. There's no book for Revenge of the Sith.
The book for Revenge of the Sith is supposedly a lot darker.
Yeah, I bet it was. But the book is based off of the screenplay, not the
novelization of Revenge of the Sith has Kit Fisto's head sitting on Palpatine's desk, or right around his desk where he died, when Anakin shows up to
What have I
eventually ends
done?
up saving Palpatine. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of dark stuff in some of these novelizations, but I will tell you,
We haven't even gone into my Revenge of the Sixth experience last week either. Damn.
you know
We'll
what
talk
we
about
should
it later.
do. So maybe next week, since we're gonna do Andor again, we're Mondays with Andor, folks.
Mondays with Andor.
But next Wednesday, I think we might want to review Tales of the Underworld, and we can also talk your Revenge of the Sith experience.
Yeah,
Because-
that'll be a good opportunity.
because it also gives me a chance to, at least movie experience wise, talk a little bit about my time sitting in the theater for Thunderbolts. And maybe, depending on how I feel after my surgery, I may try to sneak in and see a showing of Sinners, because that movie is blowing up and it
that
looks
movie
really
is
good.
calling to you.
And that soundtrack is amazing. Just
I
based
saw,
on what
I
I've
saw
heard.
a thing. I saw a thing on Instagram of a woman sitting there, all perplexed, like looking at a TV screen. You don't see the TV screen, but she's like all perplexed, and the caption is, "Why are there all these Irish people and Chinese people in Sinners?" And then another caption comes up top: "Don't tell her about how the railroads were made."
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, I think, dude, I think Hell on Wheels is on Paramount Plus.
Yeah. I don't
I
know
mean,
what that movie is.
Hell on
What is
Wheels
that?
it's it was an AMC show right around the same time as Mad Men and Walking Dead about the building of the railroad, starring Anson Mount and Colin Meaney.
Oh, yeah. You brought
I've
that up
talked to you
before.
about him.
Yes,
It
you
is
have. Yes.
fantastic.
Colm Meaney's in it. Robin
Yeah.
McElevey. Yeah.
It is a great show. And it was overshadowed by like the end of Mad Men, the beginning of Walking Dead, and Breaking Bad on AMC.
Oh, yeah. This
It
looks
was,
good. This looks
dude,
good.
Hell on
Yeah.
Wheels was freaking awesome.
All right. I'll have to check it out. I'm going to have to check it
Yeah.
out.
I highly recommend it. Anson Mount killed it. And Colin Meaney was such a great bastard.
He's the best bastard.
He is. But then he can pull off Miles O'Brien. I've seen him as a priest and things. That being said, different franchise.
Bartender. Man who walked up a hill and came down a mountain.
He was also the bartender in an episode of The Simpsons. So,
Yes, he was. Oh my god. He was a cheese sortier in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Correct. But
you don't know that.
I only know it because you bring it up anytime we bring up his name.
He's great. Yeah, he was great in that episode. Anyway, continue. Please. Sorry.
But yeah, that'd be a good one. So yeah, Sinners. And like the High Kings do some of the music. So, and Tom Cruise was quoted as saying that the song "The Rocky Road to Dublin" is worth the price of admission alone. If you see his quote on how much he loved that movie, it's been floating around a lot. Anyway,
yeah.
This guy Willman, poor guy.
I was
he was
scared
supposed
for him.
to come in. Yeah, me too. He was supposed to come in, teach guys how to use this special equipment to like harness some gas, like to release or properly release this kind of very toxic fuel or gas or something like that.
Toxic fuel is exactly what it was, but it also smells delicious and is
according to
addictive.
Saw.
According to Saw, yeah. Which I'm like, okay, so that's how he burned his lungs. Okay, good.
And that's what happens to his voice, because his voice gets more and more raspy and wild. Because if you listen, I mean, clearly it's also, you have Forrest Whitaker doing something versus an animated voice, but he doesn't sound like that in the Clone Wars. He does sound like that when it's Forrest Whitaker doing him in Rebels. But still,
is Forrest Whitaker voicing him in Clone Wars?
No.
No.
That was like
Right. So
10
Forrest
years.
Whitaker created this whole thing.
Yes, but again, you can see how he was in season 1, which is like a year. This is actually like 2 years before this. You know, he's slowly degrading to where he's going to be by the time he hits
That
Rogue
broken
One.
man in Rogue
Yes.
One. Which this show is making me want to watch Rogue One, by the way.
Which great movie, many people have said has the best battle scene in all of live action Star Wars. And I'm
I would
kind of
agree.
inclined to agree with it. The Battle of Scarif, the Battle of Endor was pretty good. I'm not going to lie, but it was also limited to a degree by its time. The Battle of
Yes.
Scarif was fucking awesome.
It looks like
That
they
was-
used real models too.
It did. I mean, and of course, it's 3-dimensional, more than
Mhm.
space battles usually are in science fiction, but it's on planet side, it's on the ground, it's in the air. And you know that like there's like 5 characters that are in this show that may live beyond Rogue One.
Mhm.
I don't think Willman's gonna live to see Rogue One.
Bix isn't gonna live.
No,
Damn it.
she's gotta die, or
She's
gotta
gonna die.
And what I'm worried about with Bix is that she's gonna overdose.
Probably. And that's
The
the
nightmares
issue.
have been so bad. By the way, tell me if this just does not look like a steampunk cappuccino place.
Dude, I was gonna say yes, you're absolutely correct. Also, this is a restaurant on Gorman. By the way,
Yeah.
every time they say Gorman, I flinch because there's a Gorman, California that exists.
You kidding me?
It
My
is-
kid had a teacher named Gorman.
Yeah.
I'm very weirded out by this.
There is
Her
nothing
teacher was a huge
sophisticated.
sci-fi fan. We ran into her at Rhode Island Comic-Con.
Nice. There is nothing sophisticated about Gorman, California. It is a town on I-5 between Los Angeles and Bakersfield in the mountains in Los Angeles National Forest. And there is nothing there. But this looks like a restaurant in Disneyland. As an aficionado of someone who's been to Disneyland uncountable times, this looks like a Disneyland restaurant.
I'm
As
this
you've
is a
experienced
Disneyland
Disney World
restaurant
the
that
way
they
you have,
filmed in.
it's possible. I've been thinking about that. It's possible. So,
This is like Beauty and the Beast or something inside the castle.
yeah, it's plausible.
And all of a
But
sudden,
I like
the cappuccino
this
machine starts singing, "Be our guest, be our guest." By the way,
Well, they all
one of the things, that
look like
Gorman-
Dapper Dans, by the way.
yes, but that also goes to the culture on Gorman. And
Mhm.
Andor has done a pretty good job of showing human cultures on different planets now, right?
Yes.
When, we've seen the Mandalorian culture, they are human, but they have a different culture. That was one.
I would say scarred,
Yeah.
but yes.
But if you've watched the Clone Wars, Rebels, the Mandalorian, there is an underlying culture. Now there's clans and whatnot, kind of like our ancestors in Ireland and Scotland and such. But there's a culture there, right? Alderaan has a culture, but they kind of tease it. Obi-Wan gave you a little bit more where where Leia's foster mother is the queen. Her father's the senator. She kind of rules the planet. He is the voice of the people in the Senate. There's definitely a very hierarchical culture there. Princess, prince, a queen, all that sort of stuff. Naboo has a queen. Their culture's not much seen aside from the Gungans having a separate culture, but human cultures you start to really see here. Chandrila, again, very formal culture, arranged marriages, a lot of pomp and circumstance. And Gorman, this is the first time you've seen humans with a separate language.
Yeah,
That is
it
a
felt
major
French.
thing. French,
It felt Latin-esque.
Dutch, maybe.
Yeah, it felt
It's
Latin-esque.
it's
I didn't
kind
even
of
know where to
guttural
look up
too.
where they got the origin for this language, but they definitely hired a linguist. They hired a linguist,
They might have
and they
hired a
hired
Tolkien.
people. Yeah, and they hired people that had the accents that they wanted, like French people, francophones, in order to be able to give
So
it a little
these
bit of a
people are going
zest.
to be the French underground fighting the
That's
Nazis.
exactly what went through my head. Like they're sitting there. Oh, by the way, like one of the
The
best things
berets.
about
Did
this
you notice
show,
some of these guys wearing berets?
I did not, but one of the best things I liked about I'm scrolling through it. No, I'm not gonna get it. One
That
of the best
alien
things
dude
about the
was
show,
really strange.
he was cool. One of the best things
Well,
about the
he was the
show
one
was the
giving the
tech.
loyalty speech.
Yeah. But the tech that they used for the radio or for the transmissions and everything, very French underground, very World War II-esque. Like they have
This
like
is
their earphones up and they're like
mhm.
dialing
this
in.
this is the cylinder that's made only for this transmitter.
Yes. And
It's
I
very cobbled
this show
together.
is very techy or gearheady, shall I say. Like they actually show how things work in a sense without showing how things work.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
there's a
Like
lot of you see a lot of varying types of technology, right?
yes. And
And
they're
it's
taking things apart, they're putting things together.
yeah,
And yeah, it was a good I liked it.
it's
We're coming up
it's a
on we
spy
got 12
thriller
minutes left.
in many ways too. It's
Yeah.
very much a spy thriller. Cassian,
This is the
you
most
kind of
diverse we've
worry
seen.
because they're still looking for Cassian. The Imperials still are. They know
Th-
he's a
But they only
key.
mentioned him in like episode 5. But like
Yes, because
the
he is the
priority is to
personal pet
find Cassian
project, but
of Deidre.
he is a pet project of Deidre and Cyril.
Yes. So
And
is it
I
Cassian that
just
brought them
restarted
together?
watching Archer, so Cyril just cracks me up.
Yeah. This is the most diverse we've seen of casts and aliens, by the way, with Saw's group. And by the way,
Yes,
I thought that was the cave monster
it
from
does kind of look a
a
bit
little bit,
like
but
a
that's a beak.
Wampa.
Yeah, that's a
Yes.
beak though. So which I thought
So
was interesting. It was a good shot. By the way, is this the area where Force Awakens takes place?
it looks a lot like it, which maybe they will hint at. Because remember, Leia cobbled together the resistance under the New Republic's nose when they weren't doing anything
Yeah.
leading up
This
to the Force Awakens. And so remember when in what the Last Jedi, that crate was an old rebellion base. This
yes.
struck me as an old, so these are like old bases that Leia has like kept in, in her back pocket. Like they're all decommissioned and whatnot. And this could be on a list of places that like, well, the rebels used to use that. They
Yeah.
did that in Legends when Yavin 4, which became Luke Skywalker's first Jedi school. The New
That's true.
Republic gave
Yeah.
him Yavin 4 to start the Jedi Academy. They eventually had to move, but that was the first Jedi Academy. So it's kind of that same principle. All right, well, there's some old facilities in place that you guys can use, and since you've been a good little Jedi, we'll let you train yours on this old base. But this does look very similar if you like turn the camera around in some ways to what
Yeah,
it
they didn't
looked
have any
like.
pictures available, unfortunately.
Right.
This is
No,
off
I
my
know,
IMDb.
but I'm kind of making that point. You're right. I think this does look like, I don't even remember the name of the planet.
It was like Darkus or Durakis or something.
Dorcas,
D
whatever.
apostrophe something. Yeah. Dorcas. Well,
By the way,
seven brothers, everybody.
this is a very interesting picture because it shows the difference in eras very quickly. So the X-Wings are clearly the Rebellion and the New Republic era we're getting close to, but that old transport you saw a lot in the Clone Wars, which is 20 years earlier.
Yeah. It was nice to hear the X-Wing sounds, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just found it nice.
It's nostalgic.
Yeah, it really is. And here's a
This
shot
was
of
one of the
Mon
few
Mothma with her
conversations
husband.
that they had where they were both on the same page.
Yeah, they don't want to go to this dinner.
They don't want to go to any
Which
of
is,
these dinners. And they're talking to each other like people, not like
yeah.
two people with two different agendas. They're like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I know, right? But we still have to do this. So what do you think we should do? They're like having a conversation on the plan of attack on how they're going to
Yeah.
do all of these things.
And they're sitting in the back of a Maybach, just like trying to figure this out.
Yeah. This was, I think, maybe the first like chill conversation they've had in the entire show.
Chill, meaningful conversation that they've had. Yes.
Right.
So it ends with not Saw, but Luthen sending in Mon Mothma's cousin to coordinate the weapons heist. And fine, and she has her lover there with her, and unfortunately that ends tragically. This is in the same Disney World Cafe that I was talking about, which is a delightful set piece, by the way. This is
a lesbian couple and lesbian love scene. Not seen much in Star Wars.
Yeah, well, it's new Disney. What are you gonna do?
It's new Disney, but again, they also killed one of them.
They had to stop it. They had to stop the whole thing. So
yeah, so
it's like
you have all these.
We had it. Now it's not. Now it's not going to happen. So.
Now you have all these tense moments. You have one scene that shows that okay, they're going to go be intimate with each other. They cut to another scene.
It was pretty. Shoot. What's the word that's failing me? Not graphic, but amorous. That's not even.
Well, it was
passionate. It was very passionate.
It was more than just a quick, they kiss and cut away. It stays there for a few beats.
I'm not hating on it. It's just
no.
I was shocked with.
Unfortunately, you don't see enough
passion in Star Wars. Romantic,
very rarely, to be honest with you.
You saw it between a brother and a sister, unfortunately, and that was probably the closest we got to that.
I don't know. Han and Leia at the end of Return of the Jedi was.
The passion was in their look when they're at the shielded door, and he goes, "I love you," and she goes, "I know."
Yeah.
So, but then we got this. I really liked seeing the Senate once again.
Yeah.
From a different angle.
There was no pools that I recall in any previous iterations. The water, which was kind of neat.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been from a different angle that we're seeing it, and it was always
clearly
there.
It has to be. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be.
Yeah. But it was nice to see the Senate on a TV show, by the way, because this is an intricate scene to do. Also, cheaper to do now than it was 20 years ago. Let's be honest, or 26 years ago, way back in the day. And this is the loyalty speech for all the new senators that are coming in and everything, which we don't have much time to discuss, but I'm trying to figure out the legislative structure for the Empire. Is it just a Senate? Is there no House of Representatives or House of Commons?
It's only been the Senate. I mean, they have representatives who are almost like underlings to senators. But like Jar Jar was a representative.
Yeah.
Almost like a junior partner. But
Mon Mothma was there, and she stopped giving the loyalty speech, and then she walked out real fast. Was that a sign that she was just sick of the process, or?
well, this guy almost looks like an alien overlord.
He does.
And he's like reciting this pro-empire speech. And what you are seeing is less like the Senate in the Clone Wars and the prequels were very diverse. There are some aliens, but it's less and less diverse, you see. You made a comment about the resistance or about Saw's rebel cell. There's not been one major character in Andor thus far who's human.
That hasn't been human.
That it isn't human.
Yeah.
So it's
Which it bothers me. It bothers the shit out of me, by the way. Like I'm like,
believe
I'm sitting here.
That's the point. I think
I
it's
know
supposed to bother us.
It bothers me because I know that there are other entities out there and other races that want to be part of this, and we see them in the background. But this is like the quote least diverse Star Wars that we've ever seen when it comes to outside of the first movie, which was 1977, and they were operating on a shoestring budget and all that other fun stuff. Fine, but
let's not forget they have the entire scene in the cantina, which was all aliens.
Right, exactly. And the bartender said we don't serve their kind, meaning the droids, which is just 19 years removed from the separatist movement where that used all the droids to kill people.
Right.
And
besides which, how would he serve droids?
Well, that's the other question, right? Yeah. I know, but it was like, he didn't want them there. So, by the way, this is my favorite character in the whole show. The assistant
Luthen's assistant?
Yeah, I don't know her name. I can't find her anywhere, but I freaking love her. I am in love with this woman. Like, she's just fantastic. She does her job. She knows what she's doing. And the whole episode of episode 6 was them trying to remove the bug that they had in an artifact that Skokel, was it Skokel?
Scoobin.
Skolden. I was way off. Skolden had bought from Luthen, and it was their idea to.
It was designed to do that. Clea is her name.
Clea, thank you. I love her. She's amazing. She's just wonderful. I wish we saw more of her. She's just fantastic.
It looks like they're shaping up for us to see more of her because she definitely got a lot to do as the episodes go on.
Yeah, and she was like trying to pull that bug out from underneath a crevice in the artifact. And she was telling the Imperial officer, the intelligence officer that was on their side, who was terrified to be there, didn't want to be there. She kept saying, move to your left.
Mm-hmm.
Move to your left and do your job. And he's like, I found her enticing. And like, she's pulling,
Lonnie.
it got stuck. It got stuck, and she was pulling it so hard that she actually like drew blood from her hand.
Mm-hmm.
It was showed the passion with her trying to get this item out. Just fantastic. And this picture right here is of them leaving the party, and she's handing the bug to Luthen. By the way, that building behind them is a real building. It exists. Like the arcs and everything, that's a real thing. So
yeah, she's I think listed under the main cast as I'm looking at it.
What's
other people
name?
Who are Clea?
I'm gonna write that down
with a K, Kleya. So, she is a she's getting more and more to do. You know, she's his communications operator, but she's also in some
She
ways
knows
his
her
second in
stuff.
command.
She
She,
is keeping Luthen in line, and I freaking love it.
yeah.
Like,
So
I don't know why I'm so enamored with this character, but she's just the best. Like, out of all of them, she is in charge. She knows what's happening, and she knows how to get it done.
yeah,
And I
we're
almost
gonna
think that
see.
Luthen reports to her.
Well, he doesn't. He doesn't push back on her the same way he pushes back on a lot of others. Like
No.
she will push back on him hard.
Mhm.
But you have Bail Organa and Orson Krennic are both supposed to be in this series more. So we'll see as they progress with their next 3 episodes.
By the way, I liked having Krennic in this episode too. There were a couple photos, but they were really like close up. I didn't feel
The
that they were
debates that
so.
he and Mon Mothma were having in this gallery while Clea is trying to remove the bug were
Well done.
fascinating.
Good writing.
Yes.
Great writing. I mean, I want to give a hat off to the writer of this episode. Or all these episodes. These are all well done episodes.
This 3 episode arc is, I think, a little stronger than the first 3.
I agree.
Mostly
Andor
because
had something to do, kind of.
well, he did. You know, he had like 2 missions. One was to try to do Luthen's missions, and the other was to try to, you know, help Bix. Now, I liked this at
This
the very
came out
end.
of nowhere. Like the bombing of her torturer, Bix's torturer.
They hinted at him earlier, and even the Imperials don't like him. Like,
yeah,
Deirdre, her boss, they don't like him. They think he's a necessary evil, but a real scumbag. And clearly, this is why these 2 guys, this was a side project for them.
I mean, was this sanctioned by Luthen, do you think? Because I don't remember him mentioning it.
I think they're starting to push back on Luthen.
Well, that's my concern. Yeah.
Cassian is at some point is going to split with Luthen. It's either that or Luthen's going to die, which you'd almost figure he'd have to.
Right.
Because you don't see him ever again.
And well, in the next 3 episodes is going to take place a year from now. And we're going to see a completely different situation.
Yep.
When it comes to this. And by the way, I actually fell for the fact that Deidre and Cyril were not together. I was very disappointed at the idea. And then in this episode, they have a reunion. They were always together.
Very clearly talking about, you know, there was a lot of real sex references in this episode.
I know. Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights.
and clearly we know that he's, he enjoys her strength.
He is a product of his mother's upbringing. He is literally in love with his mother. This is an Oedipus complex. I'm sorry. I don't like to say that, but
I got you, man.
Men are influenced by their women, by their mothers in a big way. And it takes a lot to break away from that. It takes a lot. But
Lana.
What?
Danger zone.
Danger zone. Good stuff though, man. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm very curious to see where they're going. Great way to go out on though, where they just they
bombed. They had
first
like,
they
revenge.
strapped the dude into his own torture device.
Yeah, that was good.
And walked out and then blew it up.
I was thinking that they were just going to leave him there. And I actually had an adverse reaction, like a sense of, shall I say, like, claustrophobia, seeing him with his mouth covered, his ears covered, then his eyes covered. I just, it was a nightmare for me. And I'm like, oh, I know he's an asshole and the worst person ever, but you're gonna leave him to like the worst punishment ever with that sound. And then I actually was relieved that they killed him. in a way.
Disappointed, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
only a little. I worried that that was how she was going to die because she did it on her own. But when Cassian showed up, I was like, oh, I got you. Good. We're going to see more of her. We're just not going to axe her after a couple of episodes where she's pretty much doped up for half of them. And then she gets whacked at the end like they did his best friend in the last 3 episodes.
All that is true. All that, yeah, I agree. So far, I'm liking the progression that Andor is going. How do you feel?
I like it. It's getting stronger.
I agree. I mean, the writing is really solid. So, damn.
Well, and that is something we keep saying we like.
Absolutely. Any parting words, sir?
We need. I'm looking forward to the next 3 dropping tomorrow. I may not be able to watch them. I may be watching them when I'm doped up, though. I may have to watch them a couple of times.
Well, Godspeed to you in your surgery, sir. So
thank you.
May the force be with you in that. And in that regard, we are those sci-fi guys. I am P.S. McKay. This is another episode, so thank you for joining us, everybody. You guys keep dreaming. We'll keep working. So long, everybody.
And I'm DT Cavman. And from the high ground, we formed the rebellion.
Those Sci-Fi Guys is an independent broadcast by Alpha Productions, produced by DT Cabman and P.S. McKay. Silverman Sound Studios affiliate is under Creative Commons. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow P.S. McKay on X at PS McKay or go to thescifiguys.com for past episode information. You can find us on Spotify, so head on over there for our latest episodes. But don't worry, you can still find us on Apple. We're also live on Rumble and YouTube. So be sure to leave a like and a comment and let us know how we're doing, especially on Facebook.